Welcome back to Origins, Minisode edition. This is the podcast that dives deep into the business of venture capital, where we learn how the people behind the capital, both GPs and LPs, make decisions. I'm Nick Chirls, GP at Asylum Ventures.
And I'm Beezer Clarkson, your LP co-host from Sapphire Partners, where we aim to invest in exceptional early-stage venture capital managers ranging from emerging to established franchise VCs. And Nick, I'm excited to have you back. Although we did have quite a bit of GP perspective while you were gone with Sunil and Mike. But really, I was excited when I was recording this to get your perspective on it, because a lot of what they talk about, I think I know that you care about, but I want to wait and hear it from you.
I thought it was a great episode. I listened to it this morning. And Beezer, I think you did a fantastic job. And I'm not sure if I'm even necessary anymore. You did such a good job. It was a pleasure listening to it. I loved listening to it just as a non-host. So it was really good and excited to chat about it with you.
Oh, that's so kind of you. Well, Mike and Sunil are really extraordinary people. And it's been one of the things I was reflecting on both in prepping for the podcast and thinking about today was we talk a lot about how the journey of a venture fund and how you go from a fund to a firm and what counts as emerging versus established and how you become a franchise. And maybe it's too soon to call them franchise. I don't know if I'm kind of making up the definition. I don't know if I actually put a pin on the map and said, we can declare you something. But gosh, if you had to pick a poster child, they're up there, right? I mean, it has all these parts, plus they're articulate, thoughtful, nice people. It really is just a pleasure.
It's hard. Yeah. Not many people can get there. And it's you have to combine investing acumen, obviously, and thinking about the brand and the positioning of the firm, which they clearly have thought very deeply on, and then thinking about team building and decision making and finding the right people and how does that team work together. Like it is.
They're really deliberate. And I remember when I first met Sunil, I want to say it was 2012, maybe it was 2013, pretty sure it's 2012. He didn't make was it Babe Ruth who pointed to the stands for the first time, then hit some crazy home run. I just remember it from some movie. He didn't do quite that because he's way too humble. But he was really clear about I'm not going to be a solo GP forever. This is early stage. I know it's a small fund, but I'm not going to call it seed because here's where we're going to be. And I know what this looks like. And granted, he'd been at Battery, I want to say 14 years. I might be off by a little bit, but in that ballpark. So he knew venture and he knew what he wanted to do. And that I think is a very privileged position for an emerging manager. I know you came at it from a different set of experiences, but he's just always been very deliberate, and they've been willing to sacrifice isn't the right word, but I think the way they said it is they just have agreed not to do some things in pursuit of their vision. I think that's a sort of superpower.
When you think about all the GP spinouts now, one of the things that came to mind was often the first thing you think about is okay, is this person a good investor? Or maybe they're way earlier in their career and how do they become a good investor? Or who do they learn from if they haven't worked at a bigger firm or, done the apprenticeship thing, which quite frankly, I didn't. But then there's a whole nother set of questions I imagine you think about and ask, which is do they have experience building a team and an organization and a firm? And how can you learn that? And, can you learn that outside of a firm? And so in some ways, I find that the learnings around firm building, and maybe you take some things you want to do, you take some things you don't want to do. In some ways, I think actually that is harder to learn in some ways than the investing as a solo GP. And now as someone trying to do that, I'm hungry for those learnings. And I'm oh, it actually could have been pretty interesting working at a much bigger firm and learning from other people or even learning what not to do.
I'll admit my bias. I always, long time ago when I was a younger person, I'm still little, I wanted to get a PhD in organizational behavior. So I have long been fascinated by the interplay of, can you really be a best level performing fill in the blank if what is the form follows function type question? And in venture, you see a lot of self-inflicted wounds that are due to people. But that's because it is essentially a people business, right? Your brain trust walks out the door every day. And if your brain trust isn't happy or there's whatever bad decision-making or anything that leads to not the right companies and not the right construction, it's not going to return. And a lot of it comes down to interpersonals and people picking and cohesion. I'm going to say something that's totally going to conflict with all that. If you pick a right company, it will mask a lot of these things, but you can't do it consistently over time. Or at least it'll be very clear. There's definitely been funds historically where there was clearly one person who was driving the returns and they could pick the world around them, but it's only as strong as that one person is. And the second they waver, there is complete, coup, or everyone runs for the hills, or whatever the exit looks like.
Okay, so to bring it back to Amplify, they were talking about decision-making, pushing decision-making to the edge, building a firm where every partner and GP, they made a point of that, so not just GPs, but partners, have the ability to vouch for something and write the check, even if there's maybe internal disagreement, or even if Sunil and Mike think differently. As an LP in their firm, they hire a new partner, that partner is making investments. In some ways, your job is to pick the partners. I mean, this is true for any large firm, right? Mm-hmm. Any firm is also picking partners. So you have to evaluate the GPs, both how good are they at investing, and then also how good are they at picking other people and building their team. Are there ever times where you're like, this is kind of my job? Like, my job is supposed to be picking the investors here. I'm sort of outsourcing this to you. And, I'm just curious, like, from an LP perspective, how you think about that, how you evaluate the people on their team when they're actually running checks.
Would you want me backseat driving your selection of partners? I think the answer is no. But I would say when you re-underwrite a fund, you do look through and say, what are the different people contributing? And it's not necessarily dollar attribution, because you can contribute in multiple ways that lend to dollar attribution, but it's not always a straight line, especially when people conceive of it as a team-based sourcing and management.
What would an alternative to dollar attribution be when you're looking through and evaluating?
It's really hard as qualitative, right? I mean, I'm just making up a hypothetical. What happens if you had someone on your team, and I've seen this, where they're super helpful post-investment in their board seat work or giving great advice, training, being able to pick who the good people are to hire, but they don't necessarily have the strongest track record because there might be more of a lone wolf type person in the firm who has got some extraordinary track record. We see that because everyone isn't the same kind of investor. If you're going to market as a team, it's what does the team do?
But that's probably more relevant for larger teams, right?
It's much larger. Yes, that is true. But I would say, well, here's what I would say. I have rarely been surprised when a GP comes to me and says, someone's moving on for whatever reason. Sometimes there's some bluebirds because something's happened, like health in the family or something, like there's things that happen you just can't see coming. But when it's something that's a business-oriented thing, we've rarely been surprised. And if the GP came to us in advance and said, where do you think we're going to see rotation? We can tell them, because not that someone's bad, but you could just say, hey, you guys all seem to be swimming in this way, and this person's swimming over here. And that could be really additive, or it could not be. How are you feeling about it? I'm sure it's easy for everyone to backseat drive when they're outside of an org. But if you're close enough to see that, we haven't been surprised.
Something I think about regularly, which is like, how are you relevant 5 years from now, 10 years from now, not 10 years ago?
My best guess, based on what they have said, how they think about it, is it's not a matter of changing who you are, but keeping the speed of hustle. And maybe there's new ways of adapting it. To your point, Amplify Bio is one new activity for them. And that just recognizing that the hustle has to stay there and continuing to find new people. And if you do have a good nose, how do you continue to maintain it and do things? Because you can't rest on your laurels. I'm trying to think of a non-stereotypical way of saying it, but I think that's probably the greatest challenge most people run into, is thinking that the world isn't as competitive as it is. And as long as you recognize that it's competitive, which is not easy. It's hard to maintain that energy and that hustle.
It is. I mean, I think about that a lot. I mean, Sunil's been at it for 30 years, 25 years.
Yeah, say 14 years at Battery, and then another, 25, coming on to 30.
I mean, that's amazing. And what I will say is, without having met him and without being a host on that podcast, he seems hungry.
I think Amplify Bio is a huge energy focus. Yeah. Mike Dauber was writing about what makes for good associates and how do you sort of figure out who could be, because they also have a very different perspective than many funds on associates. And there's fewer associates than senior people versus the usual funnel that you see. And he was talking about some of the criteria they used to hire. And he talked about curiosity, just the genuine curiosity, because seeing 100 pitches, which isn't going to take you long to get to. I don't know what is it, 5 days for you to see 100 pitches? Maybe it's 35, but it's not that many when you think about a year, right? If you get a couple per day. And the energy drain that can be to listen, just from a human capacity standpoint. And if you aren't genuinely curious about technology and where it's going, then it becomes a really hard hustle. And to find people that have that fire in them.
By the way, I think there's different versions of curiosity.
Yes.
Like, I think you could be a deeply curious person about a new market or a new technology or just people.
Yep.
Like, I just want to know everything about you, and why you're doing this and like why it matters. Yeah, there's different versions of curiosity, but it's absolutely, this job will be extraordinarily draining.
And you tell me, but I also think it goes to the value of having different team members that do different things, because let's say I'm tired one day.
Yes.
Because I've seen too many things in my brain to sort of have that energy for the day, and having someone else be able to be fresh. Or to your point, they have a curiosity in a certain angle. And this kind of is the age-old stereotypical LP question, is how long can a solo GP do it? Because of not just the bandwidth, but the mental load.
Yeah.
And then the desire to hustle. And if you aren't building new networks and thinking new things, this is a very generalization phase. It's easy to age out of your network and rely on your inbox, right? Because you see it in LP land as well. And so I can only imagine it's orders of magnitude more relevant on the direct side.
Yeah, you have to like constantly turn over your network. Maybe not every year, but probably every few.
I mean, I see you guys doing it and finding new nodes, and that takes a lot of energy and thinking, right? Which node do you want?
You know what's funny? I had this realization where like my wife and some of our friends, their perception is that I'm actually pretty introverted and like not that social outside of work. And it actually took me like years to understand this, that all day, every day, I'm meeting new people and I love it. And then like work ends and I'm like, I can't do new people. Like I want to go very small. I want to go like, these are like the 10 people I just love and I want to spend time with them and I don't want any newness, and it took me actually years to like understand that, because I'm like, I actually don't feel that introvert. I'm like, not really, but I actually think that it's just, I'm getting all my extrovert energy out at work. And then it's like work ends. I'm like, that's it. Which maybe means I'm an introvert because it's like, energy is being taken. I don't know, but it took me years to figure that out.
I don't know, but I feel the same. There's just an example last night when everything finally calmed down and I happened to be able to be alone and just watch. I think I decompressed by watching John Wick. That tells you how much decompression I needed. And it was late, but I was in the camp of I need to not talk to anybody for at least another 8 hours. Like it just needs to shush. But I think we are in a very extroverted industry. So I don't know if it makes us introverted to need to recalibrate. It might just be a recharge.
You guys did a great job. It was a pleasure to be a fly on the wall, and excited to be back hosting with you for the next one.
Well, thank you. And I'm excited for the next one too. It's always fun to co-host with you.
Thanks for listening to this Minisode of Origins, the show where we discuss the venture capital ecosystem through the lens of myself, a GP, and Beezer, an LP.
We'll be back soon with a new episode of Origins. You can find that right here in this feed, and while you're there, please rate and review the podcast. It's super helpful for other folks looking for venture insights to find our show, and as we always say, really helpful for Nick and I to know what you want to hear. I'm Beezer Clarkson.
And I'm Nick Chirls, and we'll be back soon. Thanks for listening.